Hey, welcome back to the Field in Faith podcast. Chris here with, once again,
Mr. Luke.
Mr. Luke. We're going to dive into a topic that I think a lot of us have had to deal with, whether you're a man, a husband, a father, and it's the biblical concept of dying to oneself. And we're going to explore kind of like this idea that, of course, like once you get older, you gain a whole new set of responsibilities, and what you gain, you have to kind of put aside what you really want, and it's extremely difficult. So, Luke, I'm going to kick it off with you. Just kind of your thoughts on this before we even got started. We don't do any prep on these, just so you guys know. We just have a topic, and then we start discussing it, and so I hear his stories the same time you guys do.
Yeah, and I hear my stories the same time I do. So, yeah, dying to oneself is kind of a unique concept. Actually, I have a agave tattoo that I got this last year on my wrist. If you're unfamiliar with an agave's life, they literally only live one life, and they fully mature at random times, like we fully mature at random times. So once the agave actually goes into its state of creating its next generation, it sends up a stalk or a quiote. It will either flower or drop off baby agaves, and once that is done, the plant literally dies. So it literally dies to itself to create life for the next generation. So it's pretty unique, and when we started this journey, that was one thing I was like, I have to do is it's time for me to die to myself to be able to give to the people that actually need it. So that's why I got this tattooed, as a reminder of that every day, that it is time to die to myself.
Well, I think every single one of us needs a reminder. I think it's so often self is the one thing that I think a man constantly battles with. It's the internal dialogue that continues to like show its ugly head. And the more that we understand Christ's sacrifice for us, the more we understand what Jesus actually came to do and what he taught. And when he said, hey, in order to follow me, you have to like carry your own cross, essentially. You're going to have to die to your wants and your needs and your desires, because it's the age-old story of Gethsemane.
Yeah, especially when Jesus is there just praying over and over and over again and going back to his disciples going, wake up, why are you sleeping? This is a serious moment, and it's pretty unique. And I actually love the transparency of this scripture too, right? In Matthew 26, where Jesus is like, God, if there's another way, take this cup, but your will be done, and he understands the torment and the pain that he's going to go through, which we all go through pain and torments and stuff. And it's cool to see that transparency and that humanist aspect of Jesus in this moment, but still at the end of the day, he understands that it's not about me. It's about the will of the Father and what I'm supposed to do next.
Yeah. I love Gethsemane. I've preached on it, I think, 2 times. And especially with like the youth, a lot of the times with young people, there's details of that story. Obviously, Jesus didn't want to be alone. I think that was an interesting point, that like he went up there and he asked them to stay awake and, hey, I want you to be in prayer with me. I need you to help me through this time. But his disciples, through everything that they had seen, end up falling asleep, which, I think can be the story of most of our lives, where we can actually be honest with ourselves and say like, yeah, I've fallen asleep at the moments where I thought I should be doing the most amount of good, because, Jesus had just finished the Last Supper. I'm sure these dudes were full. So they're like, all right, we'll pray with you, but for how long and without ceasing? And so when Jesus is asking God to like take his cup away from him, I think that's like one of the most honest betrayals of Jesus in like most of the Gospels, which kind of preludes to the fact that he knew what was coming and he knew the gravity of which he was going to suffer. But he says the most prominent line, I think, of Scripture, which is, not my will, but thy will be done.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I think what's actually even more unique now thinking about it is like, how many times does Jesus go on the mountain or go somewhere to be alone to pray?
All the time. All the time.
Almost every, I can't think of another scripture in the Bible that talks about when he wasn't alone. And this might be the first time that he has ever had other people come with him and be a part of it. To show, I think, the intensity of the struggle of what he was about to go through, that he needed the support of his brothers right there with him,
Yeah. Well, I mean, the struggle of it being severely that he was under so much anguish that he begins to sweat blood.
Which is nuts.
It's crazy. Like, and I love like doubters of, our faith and everything like that. But like, oh, you can't do that. Like, no, science has backed this up that if you're under so much stress and anguish, like you can burst the capillaries or whatever, like,
Yeah.
in your sweat glands. And, I think that just paints a picture of Jesus knowing. And I think a lot of us, especially for me, like I have not yet delved into the role of dad, but I think I know what's coming. And I think I know what's coming because every single one of my friends, when they're discouraging me from becoming a father, it's the portrayals and the stories about what to expect, the sleepless nights, the never-ending struggle of tantrums, the terrible twos, and then, the fights with controllers and technology. And it just never seems to end because I've got friends with kids who are as young as 1 year old, all the way up into high schoolers now. And the struggles just seem to change. And it goes back to what we're talking about today, which is dying to oneself and putting yourself literally behind so that you can give the best life that you can for your kids or for your spouse even.
Yeah, it's difficult to say the least. I know, especially like even my own daily routine and schedule, like I have to wake up early if I want to get any time to myself, and I have to stay up late to get any time to myself. And in those moments, it's like, okay, I have 30 minutes to drink a cup of coffee, read the Bible, pray, listen to praise, and then go do some of my household chores that I have in the morning of taking care of chickens and pets and whatever it may be. So it's like, in order for me to be able to accomplish what I need to accomplish outside of the realm of my huge responsibilities of family, job, and spouse, I have to literally die to oneself and like wake up early and go to bed late and lose sleep and literally slowly kill myself in some aspects to make sure everything is taken care of. And it's hard, man.
Yeah, and you're not the first one to say that. I'm sure any guy who's listening to this like knows and understands, like there are those moments, like it's always that running joke, like guys will spend extra amounts of times in the bathroom because that's the only time in the day that they get to be by themselves. And I think we take it for granted, that concept of, investing, because it is so difficult. And I think the pressures of the modern man, the modern family, the competition, because you're not just competing with, your kids' wants and desires. You're competing with your neighbor's kids' wants and desires. And if they get something, then you've got to provide something. And that sacrifice can mean like, hey, I've got to work a little bit extra because I got to get my kid a new cell phone, who I don't think quite deserves it yet, but they want it so bad that it's like causing me discomfort because the kid wants it so bad. And because, you want to be a good dad or you want to invest in your own kids, like you're willing to do something, but it means you don't get a new hunting rifle. You don't get a new thing. Often our wants get thrown to the backside so that our spouse or our kids get what they want.
Well, I think even too, like, right, if you choose not to get them that thing, now you have to invest even more time and be more intentional with those moments of why we're not getting those things, and the importance of like, okay, you don't need a cell phone for these reasons, or these are the reasons, the importance of money and taking care of your money. And this is why, like, one of the things I've tried to do with my kids, instead of like giving them a dollar amount, like, hey, this is how much I make an hour. This is how much this costs. And this is how many hours of dad's life that requires for me to get this for you.
Ooh.
Yeah. So it's been a unique concept. And I've tried to push this on my kids of like, hey, you want this? This requires me being out of the house for 3 hours or 4 hours of my time that you're going to lose with me, in essence, if you want this thing. So how important is this to you?
Well, I think in the opposite, there was a story, when you're teaching youth, you're always looking for like stories and, object lessons of different kinds. And that just spurred one that came to my mind, where it was like, it was a kid who had never seen his dad because his dad was in business, always working. And kid walks up to him one day and goes, Dad, how much do you make an hour? You've heard this story before?
Yeah, I remember this.
He's like, oh, I make about, I have a really good job. I went to college. I did all these things. And, dad's worked hard his whole life. So, dad makes $200 an hour. And the kid just is absolutely discouraged, right? Like $200, kid's like 4 or 5 years old or whatever it is. And just absolutely discouraged. But he goes over to his like piggy bank or whatever. And then like a week later comes up to his dad and be like, I've worked all week and I just wanted you to have this. It's not what you make an hour, but I would like 15 minutes of your time. And it was simply like $30 or whatever it was. Like, can I negotiate it? And like the dad just ends up like breaking down and just realizing like the kid understood that the money wasn't the value. The value was the relationship and the time spent with his dad. And he wanted more of that than he did, the actual money in his piggy bank.
Yeah, it's such a cool and unique story. And I think that's the one thing too for everybody to remember is like, it's not necessarily about the time, but it's about the presence and being intentional with those moments that you do get, because those are the moments that kids remember. Like just recently, like we were driving in the car with my daughter and she says something about like asking how much something cost. And I was like, yeah, you got to work for this much time and this is what you get out of that. And, you can buy a house and whatever it may be. And then she like had to write something like, oh, write down some things that your dad's taught you. And she's like, oh, my dad's taught me about money and like the respect of money. And like, and I was like, oh, because I took 5 minutes, not even necessarily thinking about it, but actually having an intentional conversation like she's a person and not like a kid being annoying about money, and took the like 5 minutes to talk to her about what money meant, how to buy things and how to make purchases. And it's like, she remembered that and appreciated it. So it's really unique. Like if you have to be intentional and put your heart in that moment, no matter what it is.
And I just got to ask, like, were you intentional in that moment, or was that just like an off the cuff type? Oh, I was just explaining this. I wasn't truly thinking like this is a teachable moment, or where were you at with that?
Yeah, I don't think I was thinking a teachable moment necessarily, but it wasn't like, oh, this kid's being annoying because she's asking about money again, which means she's trying to lead into this. So I think it was not the back end of it, but it was just, I'm in the moment. I'm just going to speak openly and honest with her,
Yeah. And we have to understand that their entire adult experience is going to be a reflection of what we did and did not do with them as kids. And so it's like what you invest in, because I you give me a hard time for it all the time, but my mom,
she's an angel,
but like I came from a family that had money but never spent it. And so like my mom, we could have gone into something and like gone in and paid full price, but my mom, she came from a poor working family on a farm in Minnesota, and she was the oldest of 8. And, she learned the concept of dying to oneself, because as the oldest of 8 kids, you're a mom, you're an older sister, and you're everything to every one of your siblings that's below you. But to me and my brother, if we wanted something or we wanted new clothes or this was coming around, I don't think we ever once stepped foot in the front of a store. We always went to the discount. And my parents had money, but never made us believe like that was the value of something. And it was like this idea that if someone's going to give you a discount on something, take it, because you're going to find value in something and you kind of can create it in different things. And I'm an adult, and you know this about me. I've used coupons my entire life, and I've been made fun of for it. I've been criticized for, hey, let's go out to dinner. What about this place? And then immediately all my friends will say,
Chris has a coupon for it.
I do. I've got a Groupon, and I thought it would be a good way for us to save some money and still get a decent dinner.
I love you said never in the front of a store, right? That's one of those things you just never think about. Like the clearance rack is always in the back of the store because they don't want people to see it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I love that you said that.
Well, I mean, and that's just it. And as an adult, like I don't even think, I just go straight to the back. I check out what's in clearance. No. And then I leave. Like I don't shop in the front of stores ever, period. Like anything, even my extremely expensive camping gear, I wait for REI's garage sale or, their Labor Day sale or their Memorial Day sale. Like I get it always on discount. And I don't do like girl math where I'm like, I've saved money. Like I know I still spent $200 on a sleeping bag. I understand that. But to me, it's just like I wanted quality, but I can still get quality at a discount. And I learned that from my parents.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is probably a good transition right here is, I think what we teach now is what they become, whether you naturally just go to the back of the store because that's what you believe, or if it's just ingrained in you, and I think once we become dads or fathers, but even not even past that, like there's a certain age too where we start to transition into this elder mode or this sage where it's time for the next generation, and you have to kind of take your Atlas moment. This is what I always like to look at it, the old school muscly guy holding up the weight of the world, there's a time where it was that guy was always doing the bodybuilding things and flexing and showing off because he was proud of himself. And it's time to now like take the weight of the world and carry that to the next generation. And I think it's important to understand that like it's not just about us, but it's about influencing those next, because there's always going to be those next. And there's people that aren't influencing those people, and the world is influencing them because everybody wants a piece of everybody's time. And I think it's important to like remember that we all have a time in our life that we have to die to ourselves, whether we want to or not.
Well, and I think, if we look back and we're honest with ourselves, especially when we are kids, like every single one of us was the most selfish we've ever been. Like middle school, high school, early college, like that's when it was just like, it's all about self. It's so funny, like dealing with middle schoolers, and one kid will come to me crying, so-and-so made fun of him. And then the other kid will start crying because he made fun of him first. And both of them don't realize that they both hurt each other off of the exact same thing that they only wanted to do to the other person that they had done to them. And it's just a reflection of like, oh, I'm going to do this because you did this to me. And we seek that, oh, I want this girl, so I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to get this girl. Oh, I want this, so I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to get to this. And I think it takes a long time to like truly see the value of what Christ had said. Like, hey, you actually want a good life? Like, you got to give up a lot of the things that aren't giving you life. Oh, you want peace? You have to die. You have to like literally give up what you want. And then if you seek and rest in me, then you'll actually be able to find it.
Yeah, I think it's funny, like, right, I think even just in the last couple of years, I've really started to understand this of like, we might fight with people and we never look at like why they're treating us the way they are, or like with middle school kids, like they fight back with fire, but they don't understand why. And I think the last few years, I've really started to understand this of like, why is that person doing that? And really thinking about, okay, yeah, they're angry about something, but why are they angry? Instead of just reacting and letting my emotions be, dying to yourself is actually looking in those other person's shoes and seeing how they're feeling or why they're feeling like that. Or, the idea of somebody cutting you off and not understanding and getting mad at them and going, well, you have no idea what happened to them today. They could have lost their husband or wife, or they could have just got fired from work. You have to like take into account. And I think that's part of dying yourself too, is taking a step back and looking and seeing, okay, why is this happening, and understanding it and walking through that, than just reacting and letting your emotions take control.
I think that's a great practical step before the reaction point, because I think as a man, it's way easy to react rather than to stop and think. I would like to say that I'm the type of person that like, I don't get flustered by those situations. Like somebody will cut you off, flip you off, do whatever it is. And I just like have learned to give grace. I think it's the most important thing that's ever been given to me. And I realize, Christ takes the blame of all of my sins, all of my hurts, all of my pains. And the best thing that I can do is offer somebody else the exact same thing that's been offered to me. And I think it goes back to that old saying, like, people who haven't been forgiven of much have a hard time forgiving. Take a look at the people that you got in your life. The people that are the most forgiving people in your life probably have some of the darkest pasts. And if God has reached their heart, He's forgiven them for so much in their life that they just have been able to extend that grace to other people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't take anything for granted anymore, you know.
Well, I wanted to bring up this one thing because I think I sent you this video of the idea that a man, let's switch over to our husband role here, that a man, when he gets married in a suit, and he also is going to get buried in a suit. And it was an interesting saying. The person that was explaining it, basically it said, like, you know, when you get married, your wife is going to be the beauty and elegance. She's going to show up in all white, but you're going to show up in a black suit. And it's the exact same thing that you're going to get buried in, which is a black suit. And you're going to have to die to yourself. That when you take the vows of being somebody's husband, you die to sinful desires, you die to casually texting girls, you die to flirting with other women, you die to, you know, lustfully pursuing somebody, which is the exact same thing. And so that when a man gets married, he's also experiencing the death of himself.
Yeah, it's the death of being a bachelor. It's the death of oneself and only worrying about yourself. You know, it's funny. Like my wedding, I literally wore all black, black tie, black shirt, black suit. I even got custom black chucks made for the wedding. Like, you know, it was just, it's true though, right? The Bible says like the man is supposed to leave the house and join with his wife and they become one. And it's true. You are leaving your individuality and becoming part of something bigger and greater of your new self, which you have to die to every day, because now you're having that other person that you are part of, that you are with, that you are supposed to be the leader and the provider and the protector and all these other things that you are required to be. And you can't do that if you are the bachelor anymore.
Yeah. And, you know, the struggle of it is, it's endless. I mean, we have plans to discuss things that, you know, are sensitive areas. We want to discuss, you know, lustful desires, pornography. We're going to do an entire episode on that here in the future. And we aren't going to shy away from like the conversations that are difficult, because it's like you told this one, is it the buffalo versus the cow?
Yeah, the difference. Yep.
Yeah. What is that?
Yeah. So the difference between a buffalo and a cow, you know, a buffalo, they can understand, same with cows, they understand when a storm is coming. And the buffalo will run directly at the storm. Inherently, it just charges directly into the storm and runs through the storm because it knows the second it gets in there, it's going to be tough and it's going to be hard, but it's going to get through it faster. And the cow continues to run and run and run till it wears itself out. Storm is eventually going to hit because the storm always hits. But the problem is it runs for so long that it just becomes weak and tired. And that's why a lot of cows will end up dying, because they are so weak from running from the storm instead of embracing it like the buffalo.
Yeah, I can just imagine like the cow like getting wet 3 times as much as it probably needed to be, because it's not able to outrun the storm. It's probably caught in the storm, but like the lightning and everything is like scaring it away from it. And so he's just getting stuck in it, man. And you told me that story a while ago. And I absolutely love that, man, because, you know, I think when we're talking about dying to oneself, sometimes the best course of action is to go right into it, to face whatever it is that you are facing head on, deal with it, and kind of realize that, you know, Christ is right there in the storm with you. He's right alongside you in everything that you're going through. And if you're willing to take on whatever challenge or whatever thing that you need to die to, he's going to be there right along with you.
Yeah, there's an analogy I actually wrote down. I was sitting outside in the middle of a monsoon, and I wrote this analogy down probably, I think, 4 years ago, and I still remember it because it's so impactful. And even you could tie this into marriage too, but the idea of what a storm is, really, a storm is created by 2 different pressure systems running into each other. And what's really cool about that, you could say with marriage or whatever it may be, you have 2 intersecting ideas that are charging at each other, creating this massive storm. So whether it's something that you've created and you're fighting against God on something, or you got married and now you're fighting with your wife, because ultimately you are two different people. But as long as you face that storm, what comes after the storm? There's going to be rain, there's going to be thunder, there's going to be wind, there's going to be destruction, but plant life needs water, and it needs destruction of tree branches and limbs to be cut down in order for that grass to grow.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, I liked it too.
Yeah. So, I mean, we, just so you guys know, we don't discuss anything before we do. So, like, I'm listening to he's listening to me, but we've been friends for long enough. I'm like, I've never heard that. Like, he's given wisdom, and I'm very impressed. Very impressed. So, story time. We don't even discuss these. Did you have any hunting or...
I think I did last one. Do you have one? Otherwise, I got plenty more.
Well, I would think it would be like one of like dying to oneself. I mean, the only thing that I can think of is every time we go hunting, like I don't pull the trigger. I don't have a big boy rifle. I like quail and bird and a little bit of the smaller stuff. So like any hunting trip that we go on, I'm always the spotter. Like I think that's a great analogy of dying to oneself. Like, you're out there in the blistering cold, hiking up a mountain, and then I think we've discussed this, but like I'm also the backpack in the sense of the time that we have. It was, hey Chris, do you want to take the hindquarter, which is the heaviest piece, and why don't you throw one leg over one shoulder and one leg over the other shoulder, and it's only 3 miles. Can you hike this back to the truck?
Yeah, you're a good-looking mule. You can handle this.
Exactly.
You don't have kids yet. You're still in shape.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that is the thing. Like, you haven't, suffered enough. Carry the heavy thing out there. But that would just be mine. You got any?
Yeah, I would actually piggyback. I mean, that last fishing trip we took with the boys, I chose not to fish, which to me was actually a big deal. And that's kind of part of the role that I'm trying to take with this, is I'm trying to be more of the guide aspect. And usually, like, if you hunt with a guide, which if you're lucky enough to do that, bless you, because it's way easier. But a guide doesn't hunt. A guide is there just to show and to guide and to help. And I took that role this last time, and I had to I wanted to fish so bad.
Because we weren't catching it.
We weren't catching anything, and I wanted to fish so bad. And for me to sit at this lake that I know I can catch tons of fish and good fish, and like to not fish was a big deal for me. So
I would just encourage you guys, if you haven't in a while, like just get in communion with God, get in prayer. And I promise you, there's something in your heart, in your mind, in your soul that you're wrestling with that needs to die. There's a part of our existence, whether it be like, oh, I've got to give up playing video games. I've got to give up a TV show. I've got to give up this or that. And then think about what are the things that you can invest in, just as like Luke said, being intentional, because those are the lessons that the kids are going to take through the rest of their life that are going to make them the adults eventually.
Yeah. And to your wife or your family or whoever it may be, it's, if you're in that relationship, you have to die to oneself in order for you to get the full fulfillment of what that relationship is supposed to be, whatever God has granted for you guys. So,
very cool. Well, guys, I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day. We'll catch you on the next episode.
Yeah, see you next time.